Chapter 51 of Pushing to the Front by Orison Swett Marden. Chapter 51. Put Beauty into Your Life. When the barbarians overran Greece, desecrated her temples, and destroyed her beautiful works of art, even their savageness was somewhat tamed by the sense of beauty which prevailed everywhere. They broke her beautiful statues, it is true, but the spirit of beauty refused to die, and it transformed the savage heart and awakened even in the barbarian a new power. From the apparent death of Grecian art, Roman art was born. Cyclops forging iron for Vulcan could not stand against Pericles forging thought for Greece. The barbarian's club which destroyed the Grecian statues was no match for the chisel of Phidias and Praxiteles. What is the best education? Someone asked Plato many centuries ago. It is, he replied, that which gives to the body and to the soul all the beauty and all the perfection of which they are capable. The life that would be complete, that would be sweet and sane, as well as strong, must be ornamented, softened, and enriched by a love of the beautiful. There is a lack in the make-up of a person who has no appreciation of beauty, who does not thrill before a great picture or an entrancing sunset, or a glimpse of beauty in nature. Savages have no appreciation of beauty. They have a passion for adornment, but there is nothing to show that their aesthetic faculties are developed. They merely obey their animal instincts and passions. But as civilization advances, ambition grows, wants multiply, and higher faculties show themselves, until, in the highest expression of civilization, we find aspiration and love of the beautiful most highly developed. We find it manifested on the person, in the home, in the environment. The late Professor Charles Eliot Norton of Harvard University, one of the finest thinkers of his day, said that beauty has played an immense part in the development of the highest qualities in human beings, and that civilization could be measured by its architecture, sculpture, and painting. What an infinite satisfaction comes from beginning early in life to cultivate our finer qualities, to develop finer sentiments, purer tastes, more delicate feelings, the love of the beautiful in all its varied forms of expression. One can make no better investment than the cultivation of a taste for the beautiful, for it will bring rainbow hues and enduring joys to the whole life. It will not only increase one's capacity for happiness, but also one's efficiency. A remarkable instance of the elevating, refining influence of beauty has been demonstrated by a Chicago school teacher who fitted up in her school a beautiful corner for her pupils. It was furnished with a stained glass window, a divan covered with an oriental rug, and a few fine photographs and paintings, among which was a picture of the Sistine Madonna. Several other aesthetic trifles, artistically arranged, completed the furnishings of the beauty corner. The children took great delight in their little retreat, especially in the exquisite coloring of the stained glass window. Insensibly, their conduct and demeanor were affected by the beautiful objects with which they daily associated. They became more gentle, more refined, more thoughtful and considerate. A young Italian boy, in particular, who had been incorrigible before the establishment of the beauty corner, became, in a short time, so changed and softened that the teacher was astonished. One day she asked him what it was that made him so good lately. Pointing to the picture of the Sistine Madonna, the boy said, "How can a fellow do bad things when she's looking at him?" Character is fed largely through the eye and ear. The thousand voices in nature of bird, and insect and brook, the sawing of the wind through the trees, the scent of flower and meadow, the myriad tints in earth and sky, in ocean and forest, mountain and hill, are just as important for the development of a real man as the education he receives in the schools. If you take no beauty into your life through the eye or the ear to stimulate and develop your aesthetic faculties, your nature will be hard, juiceless, and unattractive. Beauty is a quality of divinity, and to live much with the beautiful is to live close to the divine. The more we see of beauty everywhere, in nature, in life, in man and child, in work and rest, in the outward and the inward world, the more we see of God, good. There are many evidences in the New Testament that Christ was a great lover of the beautiful, especially in nature. Was it not he who said, "Consider the lilies of the field, they toil not, neither do they spin, yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these"? Back of the lily and the rose, back of the landscape, back of all beautiful things that enchant us, there must be a great lover of the beautiful and a great beauty principle. Every star that twinkles in the sky, every flower, bids us look behind it for its source, points us to the great author of the beautiful. The love of beauty plays a very important part in the poised, symmetrical life. We little realize how much we are influenced by beautiful people and things. We may see them so often that they become common in our experience, and fail to attract much of our conscious attention. But every beautiful picture, every sunset and bit of landscape, every beautiful face and form and flower, beauty in any form, wherever we encounter it, ennobles, refines, and elevates character. There is everything in keeping the soul and mind responsive to beauty. It is a great refreshener, recuperator, life giver, health promoter. Our American life tends to kill the finer sentiments, to discourage the development of charm and grace as well as beauty. It overemphasizes the value of material things and underestimates that of aesthetic things, which are far more developed in countries where the dollar is not the god. As long as we persist in sending all the sap and energy of our being into the money-making gland or faculty, and letting the social faculty, the aesthetic faculty, and all the finer, nobler faculties lie dormant and even die, we certainly cannot expect a well-rounded and symmetrical life, for only faculties that are used, brain cells that are exercised, grow. All others atrophy. If the finer instincts in man and the nobler qualities that live in the higher brain are underdeveloped, and the coarser instincts, which dwell in the lower brain close to the brute faculties, are overdeveloped, man must pay the penalty of animality and will lack appreciation of all that is finest and most beautiful in life. The vision that you hold in your mind, the ideal that is enthroned in your heart, this you will build your life by. This you will become. It is the quality of mind, of ideals, and not mere things that make a man. It is as essential to cultivate the aesthetic faculties and the heart qualities as to cultivate what we call the intellect. The time will come when our children will be taught, both at home and in school, to consider beauty as a most precious gift, which must be preserved in purity, sweetness, and cleanliness, and regarded as a divine instrument of education. There is no investment which will give such returns as the culture of the finer self, the development of the sense of the beautiful, the sublime, and the true, the development of qualities that are crushed out or strangled in the mere dollar chaser. There are 1,000 evidences in us that we were intended for temples of beauty, of sweetness, of loveliness, of beautiful ideas, and not mere storehouses for vulgar things. There is nothing which will pay so well as to train the finest and truest, the most beautiful qualities in us, in order that we may see beauty everywhere, and be able to extract sweetness from everything. Everywhere we go, there are 1,000 things to educate the best there is in us. Every sunset, landscape, mountain, hill, and tree has secrets of charm and beauty waiting for us. In every patch of meadow or wheat, in every leaf and flower, the trained eye will see beauty which would ravish an angel. The cultured ear will find harmony in forest and field, melody in the babbling brook, and untold pleasure in all nature's songs. Whatever our vocation, we should resolve that we will not strangle all that is finest and noblest in us for the sake of the dollar, but that we will put beauty into our life at every opportunity. Just in proportion to your love for the beautiful will you acquire its charms and develop its graces. The beauty thought, the beauty ideal, will outpicture themselves in the face and manner. If you are in love with beauty, you will be an artist of some kind. Your profession may be to make the home beautiful and sweet, or you may work at a trade. But whatever your vocation, if you are in love with the beautiful, it will purify your taste, elevate and enrich your life, and make you an artist instead of a mere artisan. There is no doubt that in the future, beauty will play an infinitely greater part in civilized life than it has thus far. It is becoming commercialized everywhere. The trouble with us is that the tremendous material prizes in this land of opportunity are so tempting that we have lost sight of the higher man. We have developed ourselves along the animal side of our nature, the greedy, grasping side. The great majority of us are still living in the basement of our beings. Now and then one rises to the drawing room. Now and then one ascends to the upper stories and gets a glimpse of the life beautiful, the life worth while. There is nothing on earth that will so slake the thirst of the soul as the beauty which expresses itself in sweetness and light. An old traveling man relates that once, when on a trip to the West, he sat next to an elderly lady, who every now and then would lean out of the open window and pour some thick salt, it seemed to him, from a bottle. When she had emptied the bottle, she would refill it from a handbag. A friend, to whom this man related the incident, told him he was acquainted with the lady, who was a great lover of flowers and an earnest follower of the precept, "Scatter your flowers as you go, for you may never travel the same road again." He said she added greatly to the beauty of the landscape along the railroads on which she traveled, by her custom of scattering flower seeds along the track as she rode. Many roads have thus been beautified and refreshed by this old lady's love of the beautiful, and her effort to scatter beauty wherever she went. If we would all cultivate a love of the beautiful, and scatter beauty seeds as we go through life, what a paradise this earth would become! What a splendid opportunity a vacation in the country offers to put beauty into the life, to cultivate the aesthetic faculties, which in most people are wholly undeveloped and inactive. To some, it is like going into God's great gallery of charm and beauty. They find in the landscape, the valley, the mountains, the fields, the meadows, the flowers, the streams, the brooks and the rivers, riches that no money can buy, beauty that would enchant the angels. But this beauty and glory cannot be bought. They are only for those who can see them, appreciate them, who can read their message and respond to their affinity. Have you never felt the marvelous power of beauty in nature? If not, you have missed one of the most exquisite joys in life. I was once going through the Yosemite Valley, and after riding 100 miles in a stagecoach over rough mountain roads, I was so completely exhausted that it did not seem as though I could keep my seat until we traveled over the 10 more miles which would bring us to our destination. But on looking down from the top of the mountain, I caught a glimpse of the celebrated Yosemite Falls and the surrounding scenery, just as the sun broke through the clouds, and there was revealed a picture of such rare beauty and marvelous picturesqueness that every particle of fatigue, brain fag, and muscle weariness departed in an instant. My whole soul thrilled with a winged sense of sublimity, grandeur, and beauty which I had never experienced before, and which I never can forget. I felt a spiritual uplift which brought tears of joy to my eyes. No one can contemplate the wonderful beauties of nature and doubt that the Creator must have intended that man, made in his own image and likeness, should be equally beautiful. Beauty of character, charm of manner, attractiveness and graciousness of expression, a godlike bearing, are our birthrights. Yet how ugly, stiff, coarse, and harsh in appearance and bearing many of us are! No one can afford to disregard his good looks or personal appearance. But if we wish to beautify the outer, we must first beautify the inner, for every thought and every motion shapes the delicate tracings of our face for ugliness or beauty. Inharmonious and destructive attitudes of mind will warp and mar the most beautiful features. Shakespeare says, "God has given you one face, and you make yourselves another." The mind can make beauty or ugliness at will. A sweet, noble disposition is absolutely essential to the highest form of beauty. It has transformed many a plain face. A bad temper, ill nature, jealousy will ruin the most beautiful face ever created. After all, there is no beauty like that produced by a lovely character. Neither cosmetics, massage, nor drugs can remove the lines of prejudice, selfishness, envy, anxiety, mental vacillation that are the results of wrong thought habits. Beauty is from within. If every human being would cultivate a gracious mentality, not only would what he expressed be artistically beautiful, but also his body. There would indeed be grace and charm, a superiority about him, which would be even greater than mere physical beauty. We have all seen even very plain women who, because of the charm of their personality, impressed us as transcendently beautiful. The exquisite soul qualities expressed through the body transformed it into their likeness. A fine spirit speaking through the plainest body will make it beautiful. Someone, speaking of Fanny Kemble, said, "Although she was very stout and short, and had a very red face, yet she impressed me as the supreme embodiment of majestic attributes. I never saw so commanding a personality in feminine form. Any type of mere physical beauty would have paled to insignificance by her side." Antoine Barriere says truly, "There are no ugly women. There are only women who do not know how to look pretty. The highest beauty, beauty that is far superior to mere regularity of feature or form, is within reach of everybody. It is perfectly possible for one, even with the homeliest face, to make herself beautiful by the habit of perpetually holding in mind the beauty thought, not the thought of mere superficial beauty, but that of heart beauty, soul beauty, and by the cultivation of a spirit of kindness, hopefulness, and unselfishness. The basis of all real personal beauty is a kindly, helpful bearing, and a desire to scatter sunshine and good cheer everywhere, and this, shining through the face, makes it beautiful. The longing and the effort to be beautiful in character cannot fail to make the life beautiful, and since the outward is but an expression of the inward, a mere outpicturing on the body of the habitual thought and dominating motives, the face, the manners, and the bearing must follow the thought and become sweet and attractive. If you hold the beauty thought, the love thought, persistently in the mind, you will make such an impression of harmony and sweetness wherever you go, that no one will notice any plainness or deformity of person. There are girls who have dwelt upon what they considered their unfortunate plainness so long that they have seriously exaggerated it. They are not half so plain as they think they are, and, were it not for the fact that they have made themselves very sensitive and self-conscious on the subject, others would not notice it at all. In fact, they could get rid of their sensitiveness and be natural. They could, with persistent effort, make up in sprightliness of thought, in cheerfulness of manner, in intelligence, and in cheery helpfulness, what they lack in grace and beauty of face. We admire the beautiful face, the beautiful form, but we love the face illumined by a beautiful soul. We love it because it suggests the ideal of the possible perfect man or woman, the ideal which was the Creator's model. It is not the outward form of our dearest friend, but our ideal of friendship which he arouses or suggests in us, that stirs up and brings into exercise our love and admiration. The highest beauty does not exist in the actual. It is the ideal, possible beauty which the person or object symbolizes or suggests that gives us delight. Everyone should endeavor to be beautiful and attractive, to be as complete a human being as possible. There is not a taint of vanity in the desire for the highest beauty. The love of beauty that confines itself to mere external form, however, misses its deepest significance. Beauty of form, of coloring, of light and shade, of sound, make our world beautiful, yet the mind that is warped and twisted cannot see all this infinite beauty. It is the indwelling spirit, the ideal in the soul, that makes all things beautiful, that inspires and lifts us above ourselves. We love the outwardly beautiful because we crave perfection, and we cannot help admiring those persons and things that most nearly embody or measure up to our human ideal. But a beautiful character will make beauty and poetry out of the prosiest environment, bring sunshine into the darkest home, and develop beauty and grace amid the ugliest surroundings. What would become of us if it were not for the great souls who realize the divinity of life, who insist upon bringing out and emphasizing its poetry, its music, its harmony and beauty? How sordid and common our lives would become but for these beauty makers, these inspirers, these people who bring out all that is best and most attractive in every place, every situation and condition. There is no accomplishment, no trait of character, no quality of mind which will give greater satisfaction and pleasure or contribute more to one's welfare than an appreciation of the beautiful. How many people might be saved from wrongdoing, even from lives of crime, by the cultivation of the aesthetic faculties in their childhood? A love of the truly beautiful would save children from things which encoarsen and brutalize their natures. It would shield them from a multitude of temptations. Parents do not take sufficient pains to develop the love and appreciation of beauty in their children. They do not realize that in impressionable youth, everything about the home, even the pictures, the paper on the wall, affect the growing character. They should never lose an opportunity of letting their boys and girls see beautiful works of art, hear beautiful music. They should make a habit of reading to them or having them read, very often, some lofty poem or inspirational passages from some great writer that will fill their minds with thoughts of beauty, open their souls to the inflow of the divine mind, the divine love which encompasses us round about. The influences that moved our youth determine the character, the success and happiness of our whole lives. Every soul is born responsive to the beautiful, but this instinctive love of beauty must be fostered through the eye, and the mind must be cultivated, or it will die. The craving for beauty is as strong in a child of the slums as in a favorite of fortune. The physical hunger of the poor, the yearning of their stomachs, says Jacob A. Riis, is not half so bitter or so little likely to be satisfied as their aesthetic hunger, their starving for the beautiful. Mr. Riis has often tried to take flowers from his Long Island home to the poors in Mulberry Street, New York. But they never got there, he says. Before I had gone half a block from the ferry, I was held up by a shrieky mob of children who cried for the posies and would not let me go another step till I had given them one. And when they got it they ran, shielding the flower with the most jealous care, to some place where they could hide and gloat over their treasure. They came dragging a big, fat babies and little weazened ones, that they might get a share. And the babies' eyes grew round and big at the sight of the golden glory from the fields, the like of which had never come their way. The smaller the baby and the poorer, the more wistful its look. And so my flowers went. Who could have said them no? I learned then what I had but vaguely understood before, that there is a hunger that is worse than that which starves the body and gets into the newspapers. All children love beauty and beautiful things. It is the spark of the divine nature that is in them and justifies itself. To that ideal their souls grow. When they cry out for it, they are trying to tell us in the only way they can that if we let the slum starve the ideal, with its dirt and its ugliness and its hard-trodden mud where flowers were meant to grow, we are starving that which we little know. A man, a human, may grow a big body without a soul, but as a citizen, as a mother, he or she is worth noting to the Commonwealth. The mark they are going to leave upon it is the black smudge of the slum. So when in these latter days we invade the slums to make homes there, and teach the mothers to make them beautiful, when we gather the children into kindergartens, hang pictures in the schools, when we build beautiful new schools and public buildings and let in the light with grass and flower and bird, where darkness and foulness were before, when we teach the children to dance and play and enjoy themselves, alas, that it should ever be needed! We are trying to wipe off the smudge and to lift the heavy mortgage which it puts on the morrow. a much heavier one in the loss of citizenship than any community, even the Republic, can long endure. We are paying arrears of debt which we incurred by our sad neglect, and we could be about no better business. There are many poor children in the slums of New York, Mr. Millionaire, who could go into your drawing room and carry away from it rich canvases, its costly furnishings, a vision of beauty which you never perceived in them, because your aesthetic faculties, your finer sensibilities, were early stifled by your selfish pursuit of the dollar. The world is full of beautiful things, but the majority have not been trained to discern them. We cannot see all the beauty that lies around us, because our eyes have not been trained for it. Our aesthetic faculties have not been developed. We are like the lady who, standing with the great artist, Turner, before one of his wonderful landscapes, cried out in amazement, "Why, Mr. Turner, I cannot see those things in nature that you have put in your picture." "Don't you wish you could, madame?" he replied. Just think what rare treats we shut out of our lives in our mad, selfish, insane pursuit of the dollar. Do you not wish that you could see the marvels that Turner saw in a landscape, that Ruskin saw in a sunset? Do you not wish that you had put a little more beauty into your life, instead of allowing your nature to become encoarsened, your aesthetic faculties blinded, and your finer instincts blighted by the pursuit of the coarser things of life, instead of developing your brute instincts of pushing, elbowing your way through the world for a few more dollars, in your effort to get something away from everybody else? Fortunate is the person who has been educated to the perception of beauty. He possesses a heritage of which no reverses can rob him. Yet it is a heritage possible to all who will take the trouble to begin early in life to cultivate the finer qualities of the soul, the eye, and the heart. "I am a lover of untainted and immortal beauty," exclaims Emerson. "O world, what pictures and what harmony are thine!" A great scientist tells us that there is no natural object in the universe which, if seen as the Master sees it, coupled with all its infinite meaning, its utility and purpose, is not beautiful. Beauty is God's handwriting, just as the most disgusting object, if put under a magnifying glass of sufficient power, would reveal beauties undreamed of. So even the most unlovely environment, the most cruel conditions, will, when viewed through the glass of a trained and disciplined mind, show something of the beautiful and the hopeful. A life that has been rightly trained will extract sweetness from everything. It will see beauty everywhere. Situated as we are in a world of beauty and sublimity, we have no right to devote practically all of our energies and to sap all our life forces in the pursuit of selfish aims, in accumulating material wealth, in piling up dollars. It is our duty to treat life as a glory, not as a grind or a purely business transaction, dealing wholly with money and bread and butter questions. Wherever you are, put beauty into your life. End of chapter 51. Put beauty into your life. Chapter 52 of Pushing to the Front by Orison Swett Marden. Chapter 52. Education by Absorption. John Wanamaker was once asked to invest in an expedition to recover from the Spanish Main doubloons, which for half a century had lain at the bottom of the sea in sunken frigates. "Young men," he replied, "I know of a better expedition than this, right here. Near your own feet lie treasures untold, you can have them all by faithful study. Let us not be content to mine the most coal, to make the largest locomotives, to weave the largest quantities of carpets, but amid the sounds of the pick, the blows of the hammer, the rattle of the looms, and the roar of the machinery, take care that the immortal mechanism of God's own hand, the mind, is still full trained for the highest and noblest service. The uneducated man is always placed at a great disadvantage. No matter how much natural ability one may have, if he is ignorant, he is discounted. It is not enough to possess ability. It must be made available by mental discipline. We ought to be ashamed to remain in ignorance in a land where the blind, the deaf and dumb, and even cripples and invalids manage to obtain a good education. Many youths throw away little opportunities for self-culture because they cannot see great ones. They let the years slip by without any special effort at self-improvement, until they are shocked in middle life, or later, by waking up to the fact that they are still ignorant of what they ought to know. Everywhere we go, we see men and women, especially from 25 to 40 years of age, who are cramped and seriously handicapped by the lack of early training. I often get letters from such people, asking if it is possible for them to educate themselves so late in life. Of course it is. There are so many good correspondence schools today, and institutes like Chautauqua, so many evening schools, lectures, books, libraries, and periodicals, that men and women who are determined to improve themselves have abundant opportunities to do so. While you lament the lack of an early education, and think it is too late to begin, you may be sure that there are other young men and young women not very far from you who are making great strides in self-improvement, though they may not have half as good an opportunity for it as you have. The first thing to do is to make a resolution, strong, vigorous, and determined, that you are going to be an educated man or woman, that you are not going to go through life humiliated by ignorance, that, if you have been deprived of early advantages, you are going to make up for their loss. Resolve that you will no longer be handicapped and placed at a disadvantage for that which you can remedy. You will find the whole world will change to you when you change your attitude toward it. You will be surprised to see how quickly you can very materially improve your mind after you have made a vigorous resolve to do so. Go about it with the same determination that you would to make money or to learn a trade. There is a divine hunger in every normal being for self-expansion, a yearning for growth or enlargement. Beware of stifling this craving of nature for self-unfoldment. Man was made for growth. It is the object, the explanation of his being. To have an ambition to grow larger and broader every day, to push the horizon of ignorance a little further away, to become a little richer in knowledge, a little wiser, and more of a man, that is an ambition worth while. It is not absolutely necessary that an education should be crowded into a few years of school life. The best educated people are those who are always learning, always absorbing knowledge from every possible source and at every opportunity. I know young people who have acquired a better education, a finer culture, through a habit of observation or of carrying a book in the pocket to read at odd moments, or by taking courses in correspondence schools, than many who have gone through college. Youths who are quick to catch at new ideas and who are in frequent contact with superior minds not only often acquire a personal charm, but even, to a remarkable degree, develop mental power. The world is a great university. From the cradle to the grave, we are always in God's great kindergarten, where everything is trying to teach us its lesson, to give us its great secret. Some people are always at school, always storing up precious bits of knowledge. Everything has a lesson for them. It all depends upon the eye that can see, the mind that can appropriate. Very few people ever learn how to use their eyes. They go through the world with a superficial glance at things. Their eye pictures are so faint and so dim that details are lost and no strong impression is made on the mind. Yet the eye was intended for a great educator. The brain is a prisoner, never getting out to the outside world. It depends upon its 5 or 6 servants, the senses, to bring it material, and the larger part of it comes through the eye. The man who has learned the art of seeing things looks with his brain. I know a father who is training his boy to develop his powers of observation. He will send him out upon a street with which he is not familiar for a certain length of time, and then question him on his return to see how many things he has observed. He sends him to the show windows of great stores, to museums and other public places, to see how many of the objects he has seen the boy can recall and describe when he gets home. The father says that this practice develops in the boy a habit of seeing things, instead of merely looking at them. When a new student went to the great naturalist, Professor Agassiz of Harvard, he would give him a fish and tell him to look it over for half an hour or an hour, and then describe to him what he saw. After the student thought he had told everything about the fish, the professor would say, "You have not really seen the fish yet. Look at it a while longer, and then tell me what you see." He would repeat this several times, until the student developed a capacity for observation. If we go through life like an interrogation point, holding an alert, inquiring mind toward everything, we can acquire great mental wealth, wisdom which is beyond all material riches. Ruskin's mind was enriched by the observation of birds, insects, beasts, trees, rivers, mountains, pictures of sunset and landscape, and by memories of the song of the lark and of the brook. His brain held thousands of pictures, of paintings, of architecture, of sculpture, a wealth of material which he reproduced as a joy for all time. Everything gave up its lesson, its secret, to his inquiring mind. The habit of absorbing information of all kinds from others is of untold value. A man is weak and ineffective in proportion as he secludes himself from his kind. There is a constant stream of power, a current of forces running to and fro between individuals who come in contact with one another, if they have inquiring minds. We are all giving and taking perpetually when we associate together. The achiever today must keep in touch with the society around him. He must put his finger on the pulse of the great busy world and feel its throbbing life. He must be a part of it, or there will be some lack in his life. A single talent which one can use effectively is worth more than 10 talents imprisoned by ignorance. Education means that knowledge has been assimilated and become a part of the person. It is the ability to express the power within one, to give out what one knows, that measures efficiency and achievement. Pent-up knowledge is useless. People who feel their lack of education and who can afford the outlay can make wonderful strides in a year by putting themselves under good tutors, who will direct their reading and study along different lines. The danger of trying to educate oneself lies in desultory, disconnected, aimless studying, which does not give anything like the benefit to be derived from the pursuit of a definite program for self-improvement. A person who wishes to educate himself at home should get some competent, well-trained person to lay out a plan for him, which can only be effectively done when the advisor knows the vocation, the tastes, and the needs of the would-be student. Anyone who aspires to an education, whether in country or city, can find someone to at least guide his studies, some teacher, clergyman, lawyer, or other educated person in the community to help him. There is one special advantage in self-education. You can adapt your studies to your own particular needs better than you could in school or college. Everyone who reaches middle life without an education should first read and study along the line of his own vocation, and then broaden himself as much as possible by reading on other lines. One can take up, alone, many studies such as history, English literature, rhetoric, drawing, mathematics, and can also acquire by oneself, almost as effectively as with a teacher, a reading knowledge of foreign languages. The daily storing up of valuable information for use later in life, the reading of books that will inspire and stimulate to greater endeavor, the constant effort to try to improve oneself and one's condition in the world, are worth far more than a bank account to a youth. How many girls are there in this country who feel crippled by the fact that they have not been able to go to college, and yet they have the time and the material close at hand for obtaining a splendid education, but they waste their talents and opportunities in frivolous amusements and things which do not count in forceful character building. It is not such a very great undertaking to get all the essentials of a college course at home, or at least a fair substitute for it. Every hour in which one focuses his mind vigorously upon his studies at home may be as beneficial as the same time spent in college. Every well-ordered household ought to protect the time of those who desire to study at home. At a fixed hour every evening during the long winter, there should be by common consent a quiet period for mental concentration, for what is worth while in mental discipline, a quiet hour uninterrupted by time-thief callers. In thousands of homes where the members are devoted to each other, and should encouragement and help each other along, it is made almost impossible for anyone to take up reading, studying, or any exercise for self-improvement. Perhaps someone is thoughtless and keeps interrupting the others, so that they cannot concentrate their minds. Or those who have nothing in common with your aims or your earnest life drop in to spend an evening in idle chatter. They have no ideals outside of the bread and butter and amusement questions, and do not realize how they are hindering you. There is constant temptation to waste one's evenings, and it takes a stout ambition and a firm resolution to separate oneself from a jolly, fun-loving, and congenial family circle, or happy-hearted youthful callers, in order to try to rise above the common herd of unambitious persons who are content to slide along, totally ignorant of everything but the requirements of their particular vocations. a habit of forcing yourself to fix your mind steadfastly and systematically upon certain studies, even if only for periods of a few minutes at a time, is of itself of the greatest value. This habit helps one to utilize the odds and ends of time which are unavailable to most people, because they have never been trained to concentrate the mind at regular intervals. A good understanding of the possibilities that live in spare moments is a great success asset. The very reputation of always trying to improve yourself, of seizing every opportunity to fit yourself for something better, the reputation of being dead in earnest, determined to be somebody and to do something in the world, would be of untold assistance to you. People like to help those who are trying to help themselves. They will throw opportunities in their way. Such a reputation is the best kind of capital to start with. One trouble with people who are smarting under the consciousness of deficient education is that they do not realize the immense value of utilizing spare minutes. Like many boys who will not save their pennies and small change because they cannot see how a fortune could ever grow by the saving. They cannot see how a little studying here and there each day will ever amount to a good substitute for a college education. I know a young man who never even attended a high school, and yet educated himself so superbly that he has been offered a professorship in a college. Most of his knowledge was gained during his odds and ends of time, while working hard at his vocation. Spare time meant something to him. The correspondence schools deserve very great credit for inducing hundreds of thousands of people, including clerks, mill operatives, and employees of all kinds, to take their courses, and thus save for study the odds and ends of time which otherwise would probably be thrown away. We have heard of some most remarkable instances of rapid advancement which these correspondence school students have made by reason of the improvement in their education. Many students have reaped 1,000% on their educational investment. It has saved them years of drudgery and has shortened wonderfully the road to their goal. Wisdom will not open her doors to those who are not willing to pay the price in self-sacrifice, in hard work. Her jewels are too precious to scatter before the idle, the ambitionless. The very resolution to redeem yourself from ignorance at any cost is the first great step toward gaining an education. Charles Wagner once wrote to an American regarding his little boy, "May he know the price of the hours. God bless the rising boy who will do his best for never losing a bit of the precious and God-given time." There is untold wealth locked up in the long winter evenings and odd moments ahead of you. A great opportunity confronts you. What will you do with it? End of chapter 52. Education by absorption. Chapter 53 of Pushing to the Front by Orison Swett Marden. Chapter 53. The Power of Suggestion. When plate glass windows first came into use, Rogers the poet took a severe cold by sitting with his back to what he supposed was an open window in a dining room, but which was really plate glass. All the time he was eating, he imagined he was taking cold, but he did not dare ask to have the window closed. We little realize how much suggestion has to do with health. In innumerable instances, people have been made seriously ill sometimes fatally so, by others telling them how badly they looked, or suggesting that they had inherited some fatal disease. A prominent New York businessman recently told me of an experiment which the friends of a robust young man made upon him. It was arranged that, beginning in the morning, each one should tell him, when he came to work, that he was not looking well, and ask him what the trouble was. They were to say it in a way that would not arouse his suspicions, and note the result. At 1 o'clock, this vigorous young man had been so influenced by the suggestion that he quit work and went home, saying that he was sick. There have been many interesting experiments in the Paris hospitals upon patients in a hypnotic trance, wounds being inflicted by mental suggestion. While a cold poker was laid across their limbs, for example, the subjects were told that they were being seared with a red-hot iron, and immediately the flesh would have the appearance of being severely burned. I have known patients to collapse completely at the sight of surgical instruments in the operating room. I have heard them say that they could actually feel the cutting of the knife long before they took the anesthetic. Patients are often put to sleep by the injection into their arms of a weak solution of salt and water, which they are led to think is morphia. Every physician of large experience knows that he can relieve or produce pain simply by suggestion. Many a physician sends patients to some famous resort, not so much for the waters or the air, as for the miracle which the complete change of thought effects. Even quacks and charlatans are able, by stimulating the hope of those who are sick, to produce marvelous cures. The mental attitude of the nurse has much to do with the recovery of a sick person. If she holds the constant suggestion that the patient will recover, if she stoutly affirms it, it will be a wonderful rallying help to the forces which make for life. If, on the other hand, she holds the conviction that he is going to die, she will communicate her belief, and this will consequently depress the patient. We are under the influence of suggestion every moment of our waking lives. Everything we see, hear, feel, is a suggestion which produces a result corresponding to its own nature. Its subtle power seems to reach and affect the very springs of life. The power of suggestion on expectant minds is often little less than miraculous. An invalid with a disappointed ambition, who thinks he has been robbed of his chances in life, and who has suffered for years, becomes all wrought up over some new remedy which is advertised to do marvels. He is in such an expectant state of mind that he is willing to make almost any sacrifice to obtain the wonderful remedy, and when he receives it, he is in such a receptive mood that he responds quickly and thinks it is the medicine which has worked the magic. Faith in one's physician is a powerful curative suggestion. Many patients, especially those who are ignorant, believe that the physician holds the keys of life and death. They have such implicit confidence in him that what he tells them has a powerful influence upon them for good or ill. The possibilities of healing power in the affirmative suggestion that the patient is going to get well are tremendous. The coming physician will constantly reassure his patient verbally, often vehemently, that he is absolutely bound to recover. He will tell him that there is an omnipotent healing power within him, and that he gets a hint of this in the power which heals a wound, and which refreshes, renews, and recreates him during sleep. It is almost impossible for a patient to get well while people are constantly reminding him how ill he looks. His willpower together with all his physical recuperative forces, could not counteract the effect of the reiteration of the sick suggestion. Many a sick room is made a chamber of horrors because of this depressing suggestion which pervades it. Instead of being filled with sunshine, good cheer, and encouragement, it is often darkened. God's beautiful sunshine shut out. Ventilation is poor. Everybody has a sad, anxious face. Medicine bottles and surgical apparatus are spread about. Everything is calculated to engender disease rather than to encourage health and inspire hope. Why, there is enough depressing suggestion in such a place to make a perfectly well person ill. What people need is encouragement, uplift, hope. Their natural resisting powers should be strengthened and developed. Instead of telling a friend in trouble, despair, or suffering that you feel very sorry for him, try to pull him out of his slough of despond, to arouse the latent recuperative, restorative energies within him. Picture to him his God image, his better self, which, because it is a part of the great immortal principle, is never sick and never out of harmony, can never be discordant or suffer. Right suggestion would prevent a great majority of our divorces. Great infatuation for another has been overcome by suggestion in numerous instances. Many women have been thus cured of a foolish love for impossible men, as in the case of girls who have become completely infatuated with the husband of a friend. Fallen women have been entirely reclaimed, have been brought to see their better, finer, diviner selves through the power of suggestion. The suggestion which comes from a sweet, beautiful, charming character is contagious and sometimes revolutionizes a whole neighborhood. We all know how the suggestion of heroic deeds, great records, has aroused the ambitions and stirred the energies of others to do likewise. Many a life has turned upon a few moments' conversation, upon a little encouragement, upon the suggestion of an inspiring book. Many men who have made their impress upon history, who have left civilization a little higher, accomplished what they did largely because their ambition was aroused by suggestion. Some book or some individual gave them the first glimpse of their possibility and enabled them to feel for the first time a thrill of the power within them. The suggestion of inferiority is one of the most difficult to overcome. Who can ever estimate the damage to humanity and the lives wrecked through it? I know men whose whole careers have been practically ruined through the constant suggestion, while they were children, that they would never amount to anything. This suggestion of inferiority has made them so timid and shy and so uncertain of themselves that they have never been able to assert their individuality. I knew a college student whose rank in his class entitled him to the highest recognition, whose life was nearly ruined by suggestion. He overheard some of his classmates say that he had no more dignity than a goose, and always made a very poor appearance, that under no circumstances would they think of electing him as class orator, because he would make such an unfortunate impression upon an audience. He had unusual ability, but his extreme diffidence, timidity, shyness, made him appear awkward and sometimes almost foolish, all of which he would undoubtedly have overgrown had he not overheard the criticism of his classmates. He thought it meant that he was mentally inferior, and this belief kept him back ever after. What a subtle power there is in the suggestion of the human voice! What emotions are aroused in us by its different modulations! How we laugh and cry, become indignant, revengeful, our feelings leaping from one extreme to the other, according to the passion-freighted or love-freighted words which reach our ear. How we sit spellbound with bated breath before the great orator who is playing upon the emotions of his audience, as a musician plays upon the strings of his harp, now bringing out tears, now smiles, now pathos, now indignation. The power of his word painting makes a wonderful impression. 1,000 listeners respond to whatever he suggests. The voice is a great betrayer of our feelings and emotions. It is tender when conveying love to our friends, cold, selfish, and without a particle of sympathy during business transactions when we are trying to get the best of a bargain. How we are attracted by a gentle voice and repulsed by one that is harsh. We all know how susceptible even dogs and horses are to the different modulations of the human voice. They know the tone of affection. They are reassured and respond to it, but they are stricken with fear and trembling at the profanity of the master's rage. Some natures are powerfully affected by certain musical strains. They are immediately lifted out of the deepest depression and despondency into ecstasy. Nothing has touched them. They have just merely felt a sensation through the auditory nerve which aroused and awakened into activity certain brain cells and changed their whole mental attitude. Music has a decided influence upon the blood pressure in the arteries and upon the respiration. We all know how it soothes, refreshes, and rests us when jaded and worried. When its sweet harmonies fill the soul, all cares, worries, and anxieties fly away. George Eliot, in "The Mill on the Floss," gives voice to what some of us have often, doubtless, felt when under its magic spell. Certain strains of music, she says, affect me so strangely that I can never hear them without changing my whole attitude of mind for a time. And if the effect would last, I might be capable of heroism. Latimer, Ridley, and hundreds of others went to the stake actually rejoicing, the spectators wondering at the smile of ineffable peace which illumined their faces above the fierce glare of the flames, at the hymns of praise and thanksgiving heard amid the roar of crackling faggots. "No, we don't get sick," said an actor, "because we can't get sick." Patty and a few other stars could afford that luxury, but to the majority of us it is denied. It is a case of must with us. And although there have been times when, had I been at home or a private man, I could have taken to my bed with as good a right to be sick as anyone ever had, I have not done so, and have worn off the attack through sheer necessity. It's no fiction that willpower is the best of tonics, and theatrical people understand that they must keep a good stock of it always on hand. A tightrope walker was so ill with lumbago that he could scarcely move, but when he was advertised to appear, he summoned all his willpower and traversed the rope several times with a wheelbarrow, according to the program. When through he doubled up and had to be carried to his bed as stiff as a frozen frog. Somewhere I have read a story of a poor fellow who went to hang himself, but finding by chance a pot of money, he flung away the rope and went hurriedly home. He who hid the gold, when he missed it, hanged himself with the rope which the other man had left. Success is a great tonic, and failure a great depressant. The successful attainment of what the heart longs for, as a rule, improves health and happiness. Generally, we not only find our treasure where our heart is, but our health also. Who has not noticed men of indifferent health, perhaps even invalids, and men who lacked energy and determination suddenly become roused to a realization of unthought of powers and unexpected health upon attaining some signal success. The same is sometimes true of persons in poor health, who have suddenly been thrown into responsible positions by death of parents or relatives, or who, upon sudden loss of property, have been forced to do what they had thought impossible before. And education is a health tonic. Delicate boys and girls, whom parents and friends thought entirely too slender to bear the strain, often improve in health in school and college. Other things equal, intelligent, cultured, educated people enjoy the best health. There is, for the same reason, a very intimate relation between health and morals. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Intemperance, violation of chastity, and vice of all kinds are discordant notes in the human economy which tend to destroy the great harmony of life. The body is but a servant of the mind. A well-balanced, cultured, and well-disciplined intellect reacts very powerfully upon the physique and tends to bring it into harmony with itself. On the other hand, a weak, vacillating, one-sided, unsteady, and ignorant mind will ultimately bring the body into sympathy with it. Every pure and uplifting thought, every noble aspiration for the good and the true, every longing of the heart for a higher and better life, every lofty purpose and unselfish endeavor reacts upon the body, makes it stronger, more harmonious, and more beautiful. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The body is molded and fashioned by the thought. If a young woman were to try to make herself beautiful, she would not begin by contemplating ugliness, or dwelling upon the monstrosities of vice, for their hideous images would be reproduced in her own face and manners. Nor would she try to make herself graceful by practicing awkwardness. We can never gain health by contemplating disease, any more than we can reach perfection by dwelling upon imperfection, or harmony through discord. We should keep a high ideal of health and harmony constantly before the mind, and we should fight every discordant thought and every enemy of harmony as we would fight a temptation to crime. Never affirm or repeat about your health what you do not wish to be true. Do not dwell upon your ailments, nor study your symptoms. Never allow yourself to think that you are not complete master of yourself. Stoutly affirm your own superiority over bodily ills, and do not acknowledge yourself the slave of an inferior power. The mind has undoubted power to preserve and sustain physical youth and beauty, to keep the body strong and healthy, to renew life, and to preserve it from decay many years longer than it does now. The longest lived men and women have, as a rule, been those who have attained great mental and moral development. They have lived in the upper region of a higher life, beyond the reach of much of the jar, the friction, and the discords which weaken and shatter most lives. Many nervous diseases have been cured by music, while others have been greatly retarded in their development by it. Anything which keeps the mind off our troubles tends to restore harmony throughout the body. It is a great thing to form a habit, acquire a reputation, of always talking up and never down, of seeing good things and never bad, of encouraging and never discouraging, and of always being optimistic about everything. Send forth loving, stainless, and happy thoughts and blessings will flow into your hands. Send forth hateful, impure, and unhappy thoughts, and curses will rain down upon you, and fear and unrest will wait upon your pillow. There is no one principle that is abused today in the business world more than the law of suggestion. Everywhere in this country we see the pathetic victims of those who make a business of overpowering and controlling weaker minds. Thus is suggestion carried even to the point of hypnotism, as is illustrated by unscrupulous salesmen and promoters. If a person steals the property of another, he is imprisoned. But if he hypnotizes his victim by projecting his own strong, trained thought into the innocent, untrained, unsuspecting victim's mind, overcomes his objections, and induces him voluntarily to buy the thing he does not want and cannot afford to buy, perhaps impoverishing him for years, so that he and his family suffer for the necessities of life, no law can stop him. It would be better and should be considered less criminal for a man to go into a home and steal articles of value than to overpower the minds of the heads of poor families and hypnotize them into signing contracts for what they have really no right and are not able to buy. Solicitors often command big salaries because of their wonderful personal magnetism and great powers of persuasion. The time will come when many of these marvelous persuaders, with long heads cunningly trained, traveling about the country, hypnotizing their subjects and robbing them of their hard-earned money, will be regarded as criminals. On the other hand, suggestion is used for practical good in business life. It is now a common practice in many concerns to put in the hands of their employees inspiring books and to republish in pamphlet form special articles from magazines and periodicals which are calculated to stir the employees to new endeavor, to arouse them to greater action, and make them more ambitious to do bigger things. Schools of salesmanship are using very extensively the psychology of business and are giving all sorts of illustrations which will spur men to greater efficiency. The up-to-date merchant shows his knowledge of the power of suggestion for customers by his fascinating show windows and display of merchandise. The restaurant keeper knows the power of suggestion of delicious viands upon the appetite, and we often see tempting dishes and articles of food displayed in the window or in the restaurant, where the eye will carry the magic suggestion to the brain. A person who has been reared in luxury and refinement would be so affected by the suggestion of uncleanliness and disorderliness in a cheap Bowery eating place that he would lose the keenest appetite. If, however, the same food, cooked in the same way, could be transferred to one of the luxurious Broadway restaurants and served upon delicate china and spotless linen with entrancing music, the entire condition would be reversed. The new suggestion would completely reverse the mental and physical conditions. The suggestion of the ugly suspicions of a whole nation so overpowered Dreyfus during his trial that it completely neutralized his individuality, overbalanced his consciousness of innocence. His whole manner was that of a guilty person, so that many of his friends actually believed him guilty. After the verdict, in the presence of a vast throng which had gathered to see him publicly disgraced, when his buttons and other insignia of office were torn from his uniform, his sword taken from him and broken, and the people were hissing, jeering, and hurling all sorts of anathemas at him. No criminal could have exhibited more evidence of guilt. The radiations of the guilty suggestions from millions of people completely overpowered his own mentality, his individuality, and, although he was absolutely innocent, his appearance and manner gave every evidence of the treason he was accused of. There is no suggestion so fatal, so insinuating as that of impurity. Vast multitudes of people have fallen victims to this vicious, subtle, fatal poison. Who can depict the tragedies which have been caused by immoral, impure suggestions conveyed to minds which were absolutely pure, which have never before felt the taint of contamination? The subtle poisoning infused through the system makes the entrance of the succeeding vicious suggestions easier and easier, until finally the whole moral system becomes saturated with the poison. There is a wonderful illustration of the power of suggestion in the experience of what are called the stigmatists. These nuns, who for years concentrated all of their efforts in trying to live the life that Christ did, to enter into all of his sufferings, so completely concentrated all of their energies upon the Christ suffering, and so vividly pictured the wounds in their imaginations, that their thought really changed the chemical and physical structure of the tissues, and they actually reproduced the nail marks in the hands and feet, and the spear wound as in the side of the crucified Christ. These nuns devoted their lives to this reproduction of the physical evidences of the crucifixion. The fixing of the mind for a long period of time upon the wounds of the hands, feet, and the side was so vivid, so concentrated, that the picture was made real in their own flesh. In addition to the mental picturing, they kept constantly before them the physical picture of the crucified Christ, which made their mental picture all the more vivid and concentrated. The religious ecstasy was so intense that they could actually see Christ being crucified, and this mental attitude was outpictured in the flesh. End of chapter 53. The power of suggestion.